Inshallah, you're all keeping warm in this cold weather. Today, I would like you to help me welcome our guest speaker all the way from California in the United States, Dr. Ustad Amr Dabbour. I will give you a little brief about our speaker. He is Imam Amr Dabbour. He is Egyptian by birth. He studied in Al-Azhar from elementary to master's. He also taught in Al-Azhar University before coming to the States as an Imam over 15 years ago. Imam Amr serves as a board of North American Imams Federation and has served both as president and vice president in the past, where he has helped organize many conferences for imams and community leaders. Imam Amr has also worked with various Islamic media outlets in the past and helped translate the live Taraweeh from Medina al-Munawwara. He also holds several sports medals in national competitions in Egypt. He has been an imam in North Carolina, Florida, and he is currently the religious and social director of Salam Center in California. Imam Amr, thank you for joining us.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
I will not take longer. I will give the floor to you. Today, our topic is a little bit about the economy of Islam and the financial system of and what is the financial system of in Islam based on. So I'll give the floor to you. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Sister Noor. Barakallahu feekum. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless you. A'udhu billahi minash shaytanir rajim. Bismillahir rahmanir rahim. Alhamdulillahi wassalatu wassalamu ala sayyidina rasulillahi wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa man wala. Always beginning with the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and sending the best of peace and blessings to the soul of our Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Let's quickly read Surah Al-Fatiha for the barakah, for the blessing, and inshallah. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. الرحمن الرحيم. مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. Money. The shift is big from Quran to money, right? So how does it work in Islam? I was approached by the brothers and sisters, Sister Noor and Sheikh Mahmoud from Masjid al-Rashid, mashallah, to talk about economy in Islam and economics in Islam in general. And I'm not an economist because in Islam, like any other, I'm talking about fiqh or studying the rules of Islam, is just like any other specialty. Not any physician would be able to not specialized in all medicine. We have specialties and subspecialties, and transactions in economy is very I wouldn't say complicated, but really dense branch of the Islamic fiqh that we do have some experts and some specialists when it comes to this, jurists and fuqaha. And in the meantime, we have al-waqi', or the reality that we have nowadays. We have endless contracts and forms of transactions with the economy and life that we have nowadays. That's on a daily basis. It's we have new contracts and transactions being introduced in the market. So we are here today, inshallah, I'm here to generally share with you some of al-qawa'id wal-dawabit al-shar'iyya al-'amma, some of the very general rules of investment, economy, transactions in general in Islam. Before we talk about this, I would like to share with you in just a couple of minutes the philosophy of Islam when it comes to money. When it comes to money, how does Islam see money and how does it work? Because this is very important element to understand zakah, to understand other financial and fiscal transactions in Islam, right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, first of all, we own the money. You know, you have your own money, you have your bank account, you have your card, you have access to that money, and you own it. You own that money, and you can buy and sell and do whatever you want to do with that money. But in Islam, we are not the actual owners of the money. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the Quran is giving us the concept by saying, وَأَنفِقُوا مِمَّا جَعَلَكُم مُسْتَخْلَفِينَ فِيهِ. Spend of what He, Allah Azza wa Jal, has made you مُسْتَخْلَفِينَ فِيهِ. مُسْتَخْلَفِين, it's the relationship between the wakil and the muwakkil. Somebody has the power and he defers this power to someone else. You give your lawyer the power of attorney, for example. You appoint somebody to represent you. You're giving them that power. So here Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He said He gives us that power over the money. It's not ours. We all know that everything in the skies and the earth belong to Allah. وَلِلَّهِ مُلْكُ السَّمَاوَاتِ وَالْأَرْضِ. To Allah belongs the kingdom of the skies and earth. We come here for a short period of time where we enjoy that kind of quote unquote ownership of the money. When you are given the power of attorney, for example, when you give it to a lawyer, you define for that lawyer what to do with it. It's restricted. It's to represent me when it comes to that kind of court and that kind of case or what have you. So there are some limitations. There are some directions from the one who gives the power. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gave us everything. Allah is the one who gave us ourselves and our life and our money. And He is the one that has the right to tell us what to do with it. We're supposed, as we are managing and disposing our money and dealing with our money and property in general, and even our own selves, we're supposed to refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, see what He wants to do with it. I'm saying that because even though it's very obvious, but we do have some Muslims nowadays who believe that the idea of Islam for them is transactions. What are you talking about? Why do we have to refer to Islam when it comes to buying, selling, and other daily transactions like this? Well, if you open the Quran, you will find rules about al-bay'a, al-riba, selling, transactions in general, usury and interest. You will find mortgage. You'll find a lot of rules. Just open the Quran and see that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing these in the Quran al-Kareem. So money belongs to Allah. This is rule number one that we have to understand. And we are here just mustakhlafina fihi. We are giving that term, being over that money to see, for Allah to see us, to see what we're going to do with it. That's rule number one. Rule number two, and maybe it's enough to share only these two rules. The second rule is money is not a goal in itself. In Islam, it is not a commodity. It is not a merchandise. It is a tool or means. Al-mal wasila. We see in many markets nowadays, money in itself becomes a merchandise. It's commercialized in such a way that you sell it and you buy it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want us to sell or buy money, because if everybody sells and buys money, there will be nobody to produce commodities and goods and services. If money becomes the goal, these banknotes or even gold and silver and banknotes in themselves, in reality, they carry almost no value. There's no value for the $100 that you carry. There's no value for the money or the cash in itself, by itself. This is $100 right here. It has some value. It carries some value because we give it that value. You can use it to buy water for you and your family for a month or two. You can use it to buy something that's not beneficial. Could be haram. Could be bad for you. If you're lost in the forest, and you have the tons of these, they're going to be of almost no value to you. The only value that this may carry to you is if you put it in fire and just use it to get some warmth, right? So the money itself does not have value. It's a means. It's just a means to buy other things. And that's why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not want us to keep it. Allah does not want to hold many of that or much of that. He wants us to let it go, put it in the market, because this is the means. This is the means to keep the cycle of life, the cycle of production and economy going. Because if I have this and I keep it with me and I have 100,000, put them with me, it's going to be depriving of the market of that money that could be put into the market in terms of investment, in terms of somebody buying or selling, and which will end up creating some chances for people to work, some jobs, some way for some people to work and some people to produce, and it goes on. The cycle of life goes on because of everybody putting their money in the market like this. But if everybody decides to keep it, it's your money, no problem. But guess what? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say, you decided to kind of deprive the market and everyone else of that money, which is yours, no problem. But because of that, that will affect the market in general, the society in general, and the people who will be affected the most will be the most marginalized, the poor, the needy, who will end up suffering somehow because of you deciding to keep that money for yourself. And that's why you have to end up paying zakat. Small percentage of your money that you decide to keep. So the estimate, I think the last time I made it was kind of, I think it was 2,200. 2,200, if you keep 2,200 American dollars for 1 year, depends on what is the standard you go by. You go by the silver or the gold. That's not our main issue for now. But if we say the minimum requirement for zakat, the nisab, the threshold for zakat, for you to have it for 1 year so as to pay zakat is 2,200, then if you have 2,200 in position, that's yours. You keep it for 1 year, you have to pay 2.5% on that for zakat. If you have $2.5 billion, but you have them out there in the market, like investment in real estate and anything else, most of the time there's going to be no zakat on them. No zakat on these assets out there, simply because these are 2.5 billion versus 2,200. What is the concept? I think the concept is clear right now. Is money is a tool, money is a means. You don't want to just keep it and hoard it. You need to put it in the market as much as you can and try to make it go in that cycle. We don't sell money, we don't buy money for itself. When we lend for a good cause within the Islamic, the general rules of Islam, soft loans and what have you. Otherwise, we have so many other transactions in Islam. I just want to start off with these two main points that I think of as really key to understanding the economy in general. Money is not a commodity in itself. It's a tool, it's a means. We don't sell or buy money because it's not meant for that. And number one is money at all belongs to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Money and us in the world and the commodities and everything belongs to Allah. And that's why we have to go by what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has to tell us. Now, maybe I can add this one more point to make things clear. We will have in Islam general rules, guidelines. Those guidelines will never change. Like riba is haram. It will never change. As a rule, usury has a couple of definitions or a couple of areas. One of them is selling money. You sell money. That's one kind of riba. We don't do that. So it's going to be always haram. There might be some exceptions for some special cases. That is an exception for the rule. The rule is there's no riba in Islam. So we have guidelines that will never change. But in the meantime, and I see some people mix up these two. We have procedures, we have transactions, that tools, means. Those could be, every day we have new rules, we have banking system, we have, how to buy this car, this new contract, 0 interest for 5 years. These are tools and means, but we have guidelines up there that will always be there. We don't want to mix everything up together. We're talking about rules, guidelines, what exactly do we mean by al-dawabit, al-qawa'id, and all of these in Islam? I'm here today, inshallah, to share with you some of the very general rules in Islam for transactions and investment and being out there in the market. But before I say that, I say it's important, I share with you, it's important for everybody who gets into the market, those who work in the market, merchants, traders, investors, they need to know the minimum, the bottom line of those rules before you get to do something. Actually, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiallahu anhu used to go to the marketplace. Umar كان يذهب للسوق, the marketplace, and he will basically, he will say, he will test the people who are working, the merchants there. What is this? What is that? Related things related to what they do on a daily basis. And if they fail to answer him right, كان يقول لا يبيع في سوقنا من لا يفقه وإلا أكل الربا رضي أم أبى. He would basically take or suspend the license of that person in our today's term, suspend the license of that person. You're not eligible to deal in our market until you get to know the basics of what to do. Otherwise, he said, if you get to transactions without knowing the basic rules, you will eat riba, you will deal with riba without knowing. Same thing, Ali radiallahu anhu. Somebody once asked him, Ya Imam, I want to invest, I want to do some business. Make dua for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to make it successful. Then Imam Ali radiallahu anhu said, أَوَ فَقِيتَ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ. Do you have the fiqh? Do you have the right understanding of business and transaction based on Islam? He said, maybe a little bit. He said, وَيْحَكَ الْفِقْهُ ثُمَّ الْمَتْجَرْ فَإِنَّ مَنْ بَاعَ وَاشْتَرَى وَيَفْقَهُ فِي دِينِ اللَّهِ ارْتَطَمَ فِي الرِّبَا ثُمَّ ارْتَطَمَ, which means same thing like Umar said, you have to get a basic understanding of what you're getting yourself into. Otherwise, you will be committing haram without knowing. What exactly to know? You need to know what you're getting to, consult with a specialist, a faqih in that sense, and get to know what you're getting yourself into. It could be something small like the 401k. That's a kind of investment, retirement plan. Consult with somebody who got the ilm, with some expert, maybe a Muslim faqih or muhasib, an accountant, Muslim accountant who got the basic knowledge, so you get an understanding of how does it generally speak and how does it work in general before you get into this. You're trying to buy some shares, stocks in the market. You need to go and get some basic understanding of what you're allowed to do and what you cannot do before you get to that. So you will be just guided, inshallah. The importance of that is to avoid doing haram without knowing, is to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the one who gave you money and gave you everything, and He's looking at everything that you are doing. And also the purpose of all of that is for Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala putting these rules, yes, testing us, but also providing us with barakah, with blessings and doing things right. I'll give you the example very quickly of what happens in 2008, the recession. What happened is there is something that's not approved by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. We don't do that in Islam. What is it? The mortgage in the way it is done, generally speaking, done here in the market. House, you have a house, let's say it's 100,000 for the sake of, just for example, 100,000. This house, you don't have the money, you go to the bank, you get the mortgage for it, and the house is the asset to cover that loan for the bank, right? And then the bank itself might go to a bigger bank and sell that loan itself, and then you go to an insurance company, and the house is supposed to cover that, and then the insurance company might do the same thing. You end up having the same house that's 100,000 being dealt with in such a way that if everything fails, the insurance company wants the money, the mortgage wants their own money, and then refinancing again. So many claimants on this house, which is that much, while what is being owed on it is that much. And that is what is called the bubble, right? Once the bubble bursts, once that person who fails, the owner of the house or the one who got to the mortgage, are we still good?
Yes, we are, Sheikh.
Okay, good. Sometimes I keep talking. Anyways, alhamdulillah. So the bubble bursts, you fail to pay for a few months, and then the bank will start claiming the ownership of the house. What happened in 2008, you all know, everything that it's like the dominoes effect. Everything that was based on that little house, it has to just collapse all of a sudden, because it's not based on some reality out there. And economists would tell you it's a cycle. It will happen every few years. It gets, those who study the market, they will know that it should hit some point that it has to collapse again, and then it goes up again. In Islam, no, Islam is trying to make it, based on reality, based, like, live within your means. It becomes a system of life for those who for example, came from the Eastern countries in general, or at least what I grew up with. We are taught to live within our means. But the concept here in America, or in the West in general, is no. You can extend your leg as much as you want. Go get a credit card. You want to buy a mattress, it's installments for 24 months or whatever. Buy your car in that way, buy your house, and you end up having to owe that much under the attraction of I have access to that money. I'm being given access to that much money while I make that much, and then you fail at the end. One of my friends, somebody I know, all he got was $3,000. He just got caught in those credit cards. He ended up owning $36,000, and that's not fair. That doesn't, without much understanding of the fiqh or economy. And it wasn't too long. It was just a couple of years or some, and then it jumped from 3,000, as far as I can remember, to 36,000 or 30 some thousand. Another person also, all she got was $600, and she was telling me, now I owe like $2,600 or $2,700. So that's what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. It's not right. There's something there that is not right. So we should, our main goal should be to please Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And also, one of the goals of Islam is to keep your money, is to protect your money, and actually to invest it as well. Many people might not be aware of the hadith where the Prophet ﷺ said, invest your money. Go ahead and invest your money, otherwise the sadaqah will eat it up, the zakah will eat it up. So you're supposed to keep it by not spending too much, by not making extravagance. How many times we read in the Quran, وَلَا تُسْرِفُوا, eat and drink, but do not go extravagant, right? Ask any accountant, and they will tell you, number one rule is to watch your spending. Where does your money go? You have to watch, and that's an Islamic, very important Islamic guideline, is to watch what you spend. Where does your money go? That's the first, actually, the rule of thumb for investment. See what's his name, Warren Buffett, one of the tycoons. What he does, he's still, I think spends like $3 for his breakfast, and he's going in a very limited budget, and he watches everything, even though he is a multi-millionaire or billionaire. That is rule number one. So this is one of the rules in Islam, is to keep and protect your money, and also invest in your money. One of the rules also is al-aslu fil mu'amalat al-ibaha. The default, the standard, the default case, the standard in all, when it comes to ahkam in general, rules in general, is that everything is okay. Everything is halal, ibaha, permissible, until we have a dalil, an evidence from Quran, from Sunnah, from ijma', consensus of scholars, that something is haram. Because we cannot say for something that's halal, haram. It's so dangerous to call something which Allah made halal, to call it haram with no knowledge. It's the same way, it takes the same ruling of calling something halal when it is haram. So you don't want to make something haram when it is halal, or you make something halal when it is not halal. That's different from ibadat, for example. Ibadat, when it comes to ibadat and worship, salah, sawm, it is vice versa. Al-ibadat tawqifiyya. Ibadat is we don't do anything unless we are told. That's the way you worship. That's the way that pleases Allah. I don't worship Allah by what pleases me, otherwise I'll be pleasing myself, right? If I decide to pray dhuhr, well, I love Allah, let me pray dhuhr 5 rak'ah, 7. No, wrong. All of them will be marked X. Ibadat, when it comes to acts of worship and action of worship, is everything is haram, not permissible. Until you have a guideline, that's what you do. But almost, we have a couple of more sections in fiqh. that go with ibadat. The rule or the default is like ibadat, but everything else, the rule is everything is permissible. This is based on the ayah, هو الذي خلق لكم ما في الأرض جميعا. It is him who has made for you everything in earth. Everything he made for you, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said. So he made permissible for us, accessible, available for us, everything on earth. This is Surah Al-Baqarah, ayah number 29. فلا تحريم إلا بنص صريح من كتاب الله تبارك وتعالى أو من سنة النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم أو إجماع ثابت. There is no haram, there is nothing. Nobody can say this is haram unless you pinpoint why it is haram. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, for Quraysh people, what they did, the tribe of the Prophet in Mecca, well, they worship other than Allah, they did this and that. But from the things, the horrific things that they did, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala highlighted in the Quran, is that they made haram and illegal for themselves what Allah did not make illegal for them. Surah Al-An'am, the cattle, ayah number 119, for example, Allah said, وَمَا لَكُمْ أَلَّا تَأْكُلُوا مِمَّا ذُكِّرَ اسْمُ اللَّهِ عَلَيْهِ وَقَدْ فَصَّلَ لَكُمْ مَا حَرَّمَ عَلَيْكُمْ إِلَّا مَا اضْطُرِرْتُمْ إِلَيْهِ. Or the other ayat, قَدْ خَسِرَ الَّذِينَ قَتَلُوا أَوْلَادَهُم. Many ayat that Allah criticized the actions of Quraysh. Why didn't you eat of that? Or why did you make this and that haram for you? They used to invent their own ways and religions. If this camel, she camel produced 2 males in a row, then it becomes sacred. They made things haram that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not tell them to make haram, and it's been criticized in the Quran. We don't want to say for something haram unless we have an evidence for that. The list, usually the list of muharramat is mentioned. When Allah says in the Quran, this is the haram. قُلْ تَعَالَوْا أَتْلُوا مَا حَرَّمَ رَبُّكُمْ عَلَيْكُمْ, as in Surah Al-A'raf towards the end. Come, I will recite to you, or I will mention to you what Allah made illegal or haram for you. 1, 2, 3, which means everything else is halal, right? What did Allah say to Adam in Jannah? He said, don't eat from this tree. What do you mean? You can eat from anywhere else. Everything else is halal. So the list of haram will be limited, and we need to have, when it comes to investment or transactions or anything else, for most part, we have to have an evidence before we say something is haram. The next rule is one of the very important points for us to understand is مفهوم الضرورة, ضرورة, necessity, ضرورة. Many of us nowadays, we get it whichever way we understand. Necessity, emergency, it's necessity. And it's in fiqh, but in fiqh, it has istilah. It has a very specific definition in there for you to be able to use darura, because when there is a necessity, we will have some rule concession to not adopt some rules. Like with the darura, there is darura, there is haja, and there is tahsiniyat. Darurat, hajiyat, tahsiniyat. What do you mean by that? Necessities, needs, and embellishments. In fiqh, what means is darura, necessity, is anything necessary for you to exist. Necessary, by necessary I mean if it's not there, your life will be affected. You're gonna be dead. Your deen will be affected. Your deen is gonna be gone. Your property is gonna be gone. So anything to affect the 5 essential things that Islam came to protect, maqasid al-Islam, al-khams, anything that affects these will be necessity. And the very famous example, like you all know, if somebody is lost in the desert or forest or something, and there is nothing to eat, desert, let's say, there's nothing to drink, he's about to die, she's about to die, and they only have wine. Wine is haram. Can they drink? Yes, they can. Does this mean khamr is halal? No, it is an exception for them because it's a necessity that will affect their life now. Then darura will make haram, will make what's agreed upon haram, and muharram lidati, something that's haram, because even the levels of haram, not all at the same level, right? Before we study fiqh, there is usul al-fiqh, the fundamentals of fiqh. You need to really, many of us or many people nowadays think that any imam in a masjid is an expert in anything and in fiqh, and in, which is not true. We have many people nowadays who are saying, some of them are my friends, and I'm saying it. They go and say this is haram, and this is totally haram, and this is haram. And it's really, you have to get the knowledge, you have to get the deep knowledge of everything, or refer it to those who got the knowledge of it, because it's not just like anybody can say haram or halal like that with no evidence. So let's go back to our topic. Darura is anything we have haram at various levels. One level is muharramun lidhati, it's haram for itself, because itself. One of them is khamr. Al-qatl, killing somebody is haram because of itself, because in itself is haram, right? So darura will be something that will make even that biggest level of haram, it will make it not halal, but it will give you concession to break that or to use that. And then we have another rule of daruratu tuqaddaru biqadariha. Necessity is to be determined by what is needed, only what is necessary. Like for that person who is lost in the desert, yes, they have the concession to drink from this wine or eat from that dead meat, dead animal, haram in Islam, but you can eat, but how much? Only what is enough for you to survive, right? You do not get the whole, you have the whole bottle, and then you take it, it's halal, it's a concession. No, biqadariha. Only after you exhaust all the means, there's nothing halal, nothing else halal that I can eat, and I either die now or commit that haram. Now you will do it, you have a concession. It's still haram, but not on you, not for you in this specific case. And how much you take as much as only necessary for you to survive in that case. Al-haja, or needs, will be something that if it's missing, it will cause some difficulty. It will be difficult for people, not that they will die, but their life, the quality of their life will be drastically affected. Like cars, for the most part, having a car, owning a car. If you don't have this, not in all cases, in most cases, you cannot go to your work, your life will be drastically affected if you don't have a car. Again, for most cities, some cities it is not needed. It goes to the third category, tahsiniyat. Tahsiniyat is embellishment or ornament, something extra. It is good to have that, but it's not necessary, and it's not, if it's missing, your life is not going to be drastically affected. Owning an iPhone, for example, having a phone in itself could be haja, a need, and for some people even could be a necessity, depending on the situation. But having that smartphone, that kind of phone, or owning, that is something that is tahsini. Still good to have, but not at the level we agree. It's not at this level or that level. So the concept of darura is really, we need to understand it and apply it the right way. Otherwise, we'll be mixing everything together. One of the other things, also the other rules, is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants all transactions to happen with rida, with pleasure. Make sure that when you buy, you get something from somebody, you sell something to somebody. First of all, there's clarity. There's no ambiguity. There's no gharar. There's no jahala. There's no unclarity. There's no cheating. You don't cover. You don't hide. And we have tons of hadith and ayat to talk about how we should be open and clear. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam is criticizing this man who was selling that wheat in the market that was wet from inside, but from outside it was dry. We all know the hadith, right? There's no cheating in Islam. Anything that has ambiguity in such a way that can cause arguments. It's, we're not talking about little things. You don't have to go deep details of everything, but at least what's necessary to know in that commodity, to know before you can sell it or buy. Make sure وَلَا تَأْكُلُوا أَمْوَالَكُمْ بَيْنَكُمْ بِالْبَاطِلِ. Do not eat and consume your money between you in falsehood. Make sure you produce something. Make sure you have rida, or you have that mutual consent for any transaction. In Islam also, al-ghayatu la tubarrir al-wasila. You cannot have a good goal, but the way to that goal is haram, right? Like we have somebody who is investing his money in haram, something that we know is haram to have, and then what? Yeah, because I will donate at the end. The goal in itself is good, but in Islam, both the goal and the means to that goal, both of them should be good. لا يقبل الله صلاة بغير طهور ولا صدقة من غلول. Allah does not accept sadaqah. You cheat and you take some money in an unlawful way and go. spend it. وَلَا يَقْبَلُ اللَّهُ إِلَّا الطَّيِّبَ. Allah does not accept what's good, what's tayyib in itself. Also, good intention, in your transactions as you're doing something, making money and investing, niyyah is very important, because if it is there, that action or transaction will turn into ibadah. And if it's a good niyyah, then the amal itself, inshallah, as long as it follows the rule, will be good. If the niyyah is bad in itself, even though you're doing something that looks good, it will ruin that. One of the very important rules, I think we're hitting our time, but one of the very important rules is to make sure you write down all the transactions. The longest ayah in the Quran is talking about that, talking about having witnesses. Many times, especially when we have it within our communities, we get into a partnership, we open a restaurant together, whatever transaction, and we think, he's my brother, she's my sister. No, Allah said in the Quran, وَلْيَكْتُبْ بَيْنَكُمْ كَاتِبٌ بِالْعَدْلِ. Is basically the long stand in the Quran in Surah Al-Baqarah, talking about writing down everything, having witnesses, and putting everything into writing as well. How much time is left?
You're good. You can go ahead.
All right. So that's one of the other guidelines. We should also try our best as one of the rules to avoid any shubuhat or any doubtful matters. As long as you don't feel comfortable, the best thing for your iman is to avoid that, and دع ما يريبك إلى ما لا يريبك, abandon or leave what gives you doubt to something that does not give you doubt. Avoid dealing with any khabith, with anything that's not good. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is, He tells us that the believer is all good and all about good, dealing with good, eating good, saying good. Everything should be that you are involved in, including transactions and investment, should be try to make it as good as you can, inshallah. اللهم صل على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. One of the very important rules as well is the rule of borrowing money. It's so easy nowadays to borrow money, credit cards, take money, and you own. In Islam, no. In Islam, Islam discourages us to borrow money if there's no need, unless there is necessity and need. If you have a need to borrow money, then you can borrow money, and then you have to do your best to pay it off as soon as you can. من أخذ أموال الناس يريد أداءها أدى الله عنه. If you borrow money and you need it, and you borrow it with the intention of paying it off as soon as you can, we are told in the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, Allah will help you pay off that money. But nowadays we see, unfortunately, a system that makes it so easy for people to borrow, and then it becomes a system of life that we end up having a lot of money that we owe, and it's not as sacred as we Muslims should deal with. The hadith of the person who dies while owing a money to somebody else. He owes money to someone else, and the Nabi ﷺ refused to give salah for him. So let's pay attention. Let's live debt free. These are the concepts that the people in the West here are talking about. Living debt free. That's the beginning. That's the beginning of you investing. And again, I invest my money myself, and then I really read what all of these successful people like Warren Buffett and Bill Gates and all of these people, and they always talk about these things. Live within your means. Do not borrow money unless you need it. And they are talking about these basic rules. And subhanallah, we do have these in Islam. Zakah is very important to pay attention to. Study the rulings of zakah. Pay zakah in time. You can even pay it in advance. That's gonna be the purification and tazkiyah for your money, inshallah. Also, one of the important factors as we invest, as we get involved in any business in Islam, is there's khuluq. It is not just a profit-based transaction that is all money regardless. Let's say you own you're renting out you own a complex or a house or something. You're renting out to somebody, and it's kind of difficult. You don't want to charge them late payment, late fees, and this and that. let's have the element of, husn al-khuluq and good manners as we deal with one another. Amana as well, and having this, amana, or being honest and not cheating is one of the characteristics that we need to have as well. Ihtikar or monopoly, to make more money. You have something, you're the only one who produces this, or that is not acceptable in Islam. And Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam said, Al-muhtakiru mal'oon, he's cursed. The one who monopolizes something is mal'oon, because it's not all about you making the maximum amount of money, but as a businessman, as somebody who produces something or sells something or trades in something, have your intention to help others. And in the meantime, you'll be making money, but you're helping that neighborhood by having that kind of grocery store or restaurant. Have this as your intention. If that is the case, believe it or not, you will make more money. You will be blessed by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and you will be loved by everyone else around you. One of the Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad, one of the rules the next one is to al-ihsan, is try to make everything perfect, make it perfect. Do not just get into something without perfection, without ihsan. Ihsan is not only at the level of ibadat and praying excellent and having psalm excellent. All of these are beautiful, but when we get to certain business, we need to compete. When I go to a Muslim store, a store owned by Muslim, for some reason we see the difference between the service I get here for some shops and stores versus when I get to someone else. So we really need to compete in here. We need to offer good service. Ihsan, in Allah kataba al-ihsana ala kulli shay. Do we have any questions so far?
Yes, we do have a few. First of all, Jazakallah khair, that was very insightful. But one thing, it's a question actually that we got, and I was thinking about too, because you were talking about investment, and you're encouraging investment and saying it's a part of Islam for sure to invest your money. Now, we do have the general kind of investments that are out there, stocks, bonds, and whatnot. Where does Islam, how does Islam look at these investments? That's the question. And the follow-up question is, what kind of halal investments do you encourage Muslims to take part in?
Very good, but very broad question. We have what's called mudaraba, and so many forms of investment in Islam: mudaraba, musharaka, murabaha, and many other forms. Getting into the stock market in general is some kind of mudaraba. The very simple form of it is you have the talent and experience to, let's say, produce and make hijabs, mashallah. You know how to make them, and you got the talent and experience for that. I have some money, spare money, or that I want to invest, and I don't know how to. I trust you. I give you that money, and you go ahead and make these hijabs. This is the contract between us is mudaraba now. Mudaraba, I give you the money, you do the work, and then we agree on certain percentage between us from the profit. One of the guidelines here, for example, there should be no guarantees for me. I should not tell you that, first of all, my money is guaranteed. I'm going to give you 100,000 to start your own factory of making nice hijabs, mashallah, in Canada. But guess what? You have to guarantee me that I have to have my 100,000. There's no way I can lose. And I have to have, let's say, 20% of what you're going to make. You have to guarantee me this. That is not acceptable in Islam. You have to take risk. I have to take risk as well. So this is the simplest form of it. Now, it could be more than one. It could be Amr, Ahmed, 10 people, 20 people, 1,000 people. They will go and they will give you the money so as to, everybody will pay a certain share for you to work. That's the same concept, but in this case, instead of one person, it's a lot of people buying shares in the same company and owning it. And we have various forms, whether they have the right to manage it or whether the management is for someone else, but those are just the people who produce or give the money in this case. That is the stock market. So one of the important things is I should, as a Muslim, invest my money only in a good business. in a business that does not involve anything haram. So just the rule of thumb is, when you go to the stock market, we are not allowed as Muslims to invest in casinos, in liquor companies, and things that are clear, 100% clear. Any of these porn, websites or companies, entertainment, whatever, the not approved kind of entertainment. So these are things that we as Muslims, you're not allowed to buy shares or get to the stock market and help such company or invest in such a company. But again, this is, we're not living in an idealistic world. That means that we don't have the world that we live in nowadays. We don't have, almost nothing is 100%. It's not a world of black and white anymore. And probably it's never been, but today is everything is complicated. There's no company out there, as far as I know, that's going to have everything 100% halal, no question about it. That's not possible to happen. But that's another rule. That's guided by another rule in fiqh. In fiqh, the thing will take the hukm of the majority, the hukm of al-akthariya, hukm al-ghalib. Majority of it is halal, then it's halal. When you talk in Walmart, for example, if I say Walmart is in Canada too, right? So when I say Walmart, it does not come to your mind that it's a liquor store or it's a place that sells only khanzir or pork, even though it does, but that's some part of it. But it's a grocery store in general. So that's different from what is this company, Henneken or something? That I don't want to mention any names in here, but this is different from this in the logic, the logic based. So you are allowed to invest. You can invest, whether you are a entry-level investor using any of those apps out there, but just make sure the companies that you buy stocks or shares actually in is halal, or is technology company, all of these, Teslas out there. I don't want to mention a lot of names, but have your money being invested in something that looks like halal, or it is halal.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Another question that we got was about zakah. And the question says, can I pay my zakat to my relatives who are in need of my help?
Very good question. And the answer to that, يَسْأَلُونَكَ مَاذَا يُنْفِقُونَ. Allah said in the Quran, Surah Al-Baqarah, they ask you, how should they spend their money? What and how they should spend their money? قُلْ مَا أَنْفَقْتُم مِّنْ خَيْرٍ. Tell them, what do you spend of money? Good. Khayr, by the way, in the Quran means money too. فَلِلْوَالِدَيْنِ وَالْأَقْرَبِينَ وَالْيَتَامَ وَالْمَسَاكِينَ. So Allah starts with the parents and then the relatives, the orphans. It depends on two elements, how close they are to you and how much in need those people could be, like orphans in need. When it comes to zakah in Islam, we have a full system of who you're responsible for to financially take care of. A husband is financially responsible for his wife. So you cannot give your wife zakah. Wife is not financially responsible for the husband. If the husband qualifies to take zakah, she can give him zakah. This is based on the hadith. Zainab, the wife of Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, she owns money, she has gold. Her husband, Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, does not have money, and it was about for her to give sadaqah, to give zakah, and she was taking the money out, and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, her husband, is telling her, why are you taking this money out? I need it. We need it here. She was not sure that if she could do this or not, that she had to go and consult with Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And one other point on the side, see the freedom, see the how women were there owning money and disputing with her husband and Abdullah ibn Mas'ud, and he did not dictate anything. So the point is, if you are responsible, a man is responsible for his father and mother. If they don't have money, then you are financially responsible for them. It's not zakah in this case, it's obligation on you to spend on them. So you cannot pay money for zakah money for somebody that you are responsible for, because that's not how it works in Islam. You cannot pay zakah for your son or daughter that are underage and they are in need. But you can pay to your brother. You're not financially responsible for your brother or sister. Or relatives. Then you start with the relatives, and then those who are in need the most, orphans or needy. Beyond that.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Another question also about zakah is, you know, a lot of us right now, especially who have kids, we are doing savings accounts for our kids. Does zakah apply to those savings accounts?
Good question. Saving accounts, yeah, it's done for a good purpose. You know, when it's time for the kids to go to the college or whatever good reason that you might have out there. Even though it might not be, we can argue whether this is the best investment or not. That's irrelative, because many economists might argue this is not the best investment. But anyway, if you decide to do that, if anybody decides to put any money for good purpose, for bad purpose, for whatever reason, if anybody decides to put money aside, save money, remember that was the first or second rule I give. You have to give zakat on that money. Why? Because you decide to keep. If everybody will save, you know, let's say 40,000, 50,000, every citizen will keep 40, 50, 60, 70, more or less. That's going to be the provision of a lot of money from the market. That's the money that you own. But the calculation of it is going to be a little different. It will be, in zakah, one of the conditions for you to pay zakah, you pay zakah on what you have full access to. Many of these accounts, they will have conditions that you cannot pull this money before certain time, or if you pull it right now, they will tell you, for example, like the retirement plan, you have 200,000 right now, but if you pull them, it's going to be 150, just as an example. So minus, it's going to be the net of what you can pull right now this year, and you can have full access to. So basically, it's going to be minus all the fees and all the fines or whatever they call it. What you have access to, the net of what you have access to, is what you have to pay zakah on. Wallahu a'lam.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. And just to confirm, we got this as a question. Zakah can be paid at any time. It's not like Ramadan specific or anything like that.
Yes, that's a good question. Zakah actually is due. When it is due, it has to be paid. Delaying it is just like delaying salah or delaying any other ibadah. It's going to be in your dhimma. It's going to be due on you. That it might incur some sin if you delay it. You may do it in advance, though. So if somebody wants to catch the blessings of Ramadan, there's a good point in there, because everything is multiplied. So you might do it in advance. For next year, it's, let's say your zakah is due in December, next December. So do it this Ramadan, you catch the reward of Ramadan, and you're doing it early, but you don't want to delay.
I see. Thank you, Sheikh. We got another question. They're very specific about zakat. If somebody reaches nisab multiple times in a year, would you have to take zakat out multiple times a year?
That's a good question. The best way to calculate that is going to be, because that's how it is going to be for most people. You are working, you have, let's say, your salary or some kind of money coming from investment here or there. It's going to be fluctuating all year. So you're not going to count every single amount that gets to your account and give it its own nisab. If you can do that, that's good, but that's going to be difficult for most of us, because you will have every deposit you will make, you will count it by itself. The right way to do that is to have an average, or basically you don't try to make to pull money, obviously, or add a lot of, just go and let's say you choose Ramadan to be the time that you look at everything you have, let's say the middle of Ramadan or the 27th of Ramadan, and then you have some kind of take a look at everything you have that qualifies for zakah, that's zakatable, and then you pay zakah for that one time. Whether it was too much in the middle of the year or too little, it goes up and down, but you will qualify the minimum, which is 2,200. You have it, so it goes up, it goes down. It's going to be difficult to keep track of all of that. Take a look at it once a year, and at this time of the year, without any cheating, because you're dealing with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't want to come right before Ramadan and pull too much money or put it aside, or so it will be you will be avoiding zakat. That's not right. But if you do it once a year like that, it should be okay.
Inshallah ta'ala. Sheikh, one big question that we always get, and I think it's one of the biggest topics either in the States or in Canada, is mortgages. And we have a question from one of our viewers that is asking about a mortgage, of what is the exception of it to be okay? Is it okay to buy a house with a mortgage to live in, but it's not okay to buy a house with a mortgage and renting it out? And also there are currently many, what we call them, I guess, like halal mortgage kind of organizations that do provide mortgages for Muslim communities. What's your input in that, and how are they different from like a regular mortgage through a bank?
That is, again, a very deep question that will probably need a lecture by itself, but very, very quickly, again, there is no, especially when it comes to mortgage, there is no bank, as far as I know, that will offer you 100% Islamic mortgage that's free from any problems. However, we, like you said earlier in the lecture, there is the levels of haram are not all the same. Like, let's assume haram is in one level, is in one side here, is red, 100% red. And then on this side, it is, let's say, white. This is the halal, 100% halal. Not all halal are the same too, because there is something, there is in the middle right here, permissible. It's just plain. It's not white, it's not red, right? So, but then the haram, as you get closer to the middle, to the permissible here, it gets a little bit, let's say, orange in here, a little less of red, until it gets permissible. In between here, between the haram and the permissible, there is makruh. There's something makruh. It's a little, you know, it's still within the permissible area. It's still plain enough, but has a little bit of reddish that does not make it full red or haram. It's just not desirable or not recommended. In the same way here, there's something that's recommended. It's not wajib all the way, but it's somewhere right here in the middle. The point is, in the haram area, we do have things that will make riba. Riba is full haram, full red. This, if it's there, there's no scholar who will tell you it's halal. Those, some exceptional fatwas will be there, but they are actually not supported by dalil to tell you that something that has full clear riba, that it's halal for you to use it because you live in whatever country you live in. These are not based on Islam, actually. But we do have what the companies, what the Islamic mortgage companies or financing companies are offering. They are really offering or trying to offer a very good alternative and solution out there, regardless of what some imams might say. Some imams might not have, with all respect and love, might not have enough access to fiqh, that they just put a blanket on all of them. That's all like bad, all haram. That's not true. That's honestly not true. We had a conference back in 2015 or 16, if I'm not wrong, and we invited a lot of those financing company. Guidance was there, Islamic Devon Bank was there, Devon Bank was there, Islamic University Bank, many of those organizations were there, and we looked into their contract. Scholars, big scholars, Dr. Salah Sawi and others, they looked into those contracts, and we had around 300, 400 imams from North America, and we came up with a lot of recommendations. And I recommend everybody to look at AMJA online, AMJAonline.com. And if you have any detail, any question, or you need any answer, there is a fatwa committee in there that will give you the answer. And also check out those resolutions, especially at this conference out there. So basically, those mortgage companies are trying their best to offer an Islamic compatible alternative out there. Some of them are doing better than others. One company, for example, at that time, La Riba, all they did is actually, that's the name of the company, it's called La Riba. They got the conventional bank contract and they just put their name on it. Just to be honest, and we told the CEO, we invited him and we told him, there's no difference between your contract and the contract of the conventional banks out there. Whereas I'm not sure whether they did something ever since then. You need to check with them. But some other companies like Al Amin here in Bay Area, they're doing a great job. guidance in Islamic University Bank. Actually, one of the very good contracts is by Devon Bank. Devon Bank is a Jewish bank, it's not an Islamic, but their contract is really, really good. They, if I may talk about guidance, guidance offer a lot of alternatives, but one of the alternatives, one of the contracts they offer that I took a look at it myself is المشاركة المتناهية المتناقصة المنتهية بالتملك. This is basically they get as a partner with you to buy the house where you pay, like let's say 20% of the price of the house and they pay 80%, and you become partners. They do pay and they become partners. They do the closing. As they do the closing, they own the house with you 80%, 20%, just as an example. And then they end up as a sharik, as a partner, selling you their share or their 80% gradually, 1% at a time, just to make it easy. So every time you pay them, that you're actually buying something from them. You're buying this share from them. So this avoids the riba in this case, because again, the problem is procedural. Some people might think the Islamic option is going to save them money. It's all about procedures. It's all about how it is done. It might not save you money. Actually, in many cases, you end up paying more with the Islamic alternative. Think about it just like the zabiha, as you try to get the zabiha versus the other meat. It's the same thing, but for some reason, maybe it's a demand and offer and demand too, because there is high demand and less offer. But that's what they do. So they avoided the rid haram thing that's in there. They still have some problems. I'll give you an example. If they own 80% and you own 20%, how does this work in Islam? This works in Islam as you own 80%. So when it comes to the annual tax, the annual property tax, you have to pay 80% of that, and I have to pay only 20%. When it comes to maintenance cost for the house, let's say I'm doing renovations or I have to change something, they have to pay 80%. You have to pay 20% at this time. At a later time, when they own 50 and you 50, it's going to go accordingly. But they don't do that because they are not out there in the business just as partners. They are trying to make money, and this is something we understand. There's nothing wrong with that. So they have jahala or gharar in there, which is ambiguity and unclarity, and that shouldn't happen. But the level of this, it's still haram, not good to do it. But the level of that is not the same level of riba. It's not red. They're within the orange there. This is different from this, and also they end up selling that debt or that mortgage for the Federal Reserve Bank. But actually, that's not my problem as a customer. That's their own problem. It's haram to sell a debt for a debt, but that's on them. And we understand why they do that, because all they had at this time, I think it was 50 million for a company to work in the real estate market, and having just 50 million, you're going to buy like what, 100 houses and then sell them, and then khalas, you're out of them. No, they have to, go ahead and sell that debt so they can have more money, so they can stay in the market. And actually, I'm here as a sheikh, but I think thinking, outside the box, we really, as Muslims, if we want to have something that's 100% halal and Islamic, we have to enhance and invest in those companies and support them somehow so they can get big enough and they can meet our needs. But at their level right there, competing with Bank of America and Wells Fargo and all of these giants, it's good. What they are offering right now, alhamdulillah, we cannot say that those who are the conventional banks that have clear riba, clear red, we cannot say this is exactly the same like somebody who's trying and they avoided the riba, but they still have something little in there.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh, for the answer.
Yeah.
I know it was a hard question. It's not an easy one to tackle for sure. Another question that we got again about zakat is, can zakat be paid to help mosques running their operations?
Okay. In a nutshell, masjid in general is not a place to put your zakat. You do not build the masjid as a general rule. You do not pay zakat to build the masjid or anything that has to do with the masjid as a general rule. The exception for that is, let's say there is a city that does not have a masjid. it's either everybody gets their money, there's zakat to build a masjid in here for themselves, to pray Jum'at, for the kids to come. That is different from expanding or different from running the masjid and what have you. So if there's no masjid and they need a masjid, then in that case, there are some details why does this qualify and the other one does not qualify. There is an argument in the fiqh that will take time to go over, but I think the difference might be clear. Or if there is a masjid that's about to go out of service, let's say, alhamdulillah, it doesn't usually happen in the masajid, your masjid is not capable of paying their utilities. It's either we take from the zakat, or we're not going to have utility or even pay off the masjid. We can go out of service. In this case, yes, it qualifies to take from zakat. But running the masjid when we can have other sources to keep it running, no, it does not. Islamic schools, by the way, will take more priority. All I'm telling you is I've been attending conferences for 15 years and plus here in the States, and many of these conferences we're talking about tackling all of these questions. Islamic schools will take more priority because of what they do, because of keeping the Islam of our generation, next generation in here. If it's not for the Islamic school, we really need the Islamic schools, and many scholars, they really have this strong and fatwa of giving zakah for Islamic school, because by default Islamic schools are suffering. You're competing with public systems that are fully funded by the government, and you're trying to offer. It's the same thing like banking system. Those Muslims criticizing and pointing fingers, I understand where they're coming from, but unless you invest in them and support them so they can get big enough to hire enough, qualified teachers and have enough tools and means, we're not going to get there. We'll just be, we'll not have our own organizations and tools in there.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. I have one last question to you, and because you touched upon education, and I think one of the biggest elements that a lot of our young people think about are student loans. And where does Islam look at them, especially here in the Western countries? You do need to take a student loan for education if you can't afford it. But from an Islamic perspective, where do students loan, how do we look at them?
Student loan or loans in general, the way how it works is going to be riba. I remember, listening to these reports and listening to these interviews with students who hit almost 4 years old and they are still owning that chunk of money out there on them. It's riba. So this is usury and it's riba in itself. There's no question about that. But again, you remember the three levels. We have the necessity, we have al-haja, and we have al-darura. That the tahsin. These what I'm talking about here is usul al-fiqh, the fundamentals of fiqh, what the fiqh is based on. Rules. Some people might think, oh, the imam was having a cup of tea and Abu Hanifa is sitting out there and he's saying the hukm. Al-Shafi'i, he didn't like it, so he had to go have his coffee. And it doesn't work this way. They have their schools of thought and their fundamentals that the rules are based on. So addressing this question, we said that you can get into riba if one of the 5 darurat or necessities or objectives that Islam came to protect, if they are going to be affected, namely your deen, your nafs or your soul, your life basically, your property, your honor, or the lineage, the children, the offspring. If any of that is going to be affected, then something, riba, for example, something that's clear haram can be made halal. Education does not qualify here. But one of the rules of fiqh, what does it come, and what do you think, Sister Noor, the need for education or education will come under which category? Is it a necessity in the fiqhi term, as I explained, or would it come under a need, or would it come under something extra?
I would think it's a need.
It's a need. That's what it is. It's a need. But the scholars, each one of this al-haja, it will have volumes under it. How to define it exactly? How do you classify everyone? And there's so many categories of it and levels of it. Scholars would raise haja or need into darura when it's حاجة عامة. A need for you is different from a need for the whole family, is different for a need for the whole community, is different from a need for everybody. Education is not just a need like a car is a need also that's for everybody, but there might be a personally need in one case, but that is not a personal need. That is a need that's for the Muslim community. We need to have some physicians. We need Muslim sisters, for the Muslims we need to have Muslim accountants and in the banking system and in lawyers. If we are to talk about some existence out here. So this is a need for the whole community. Needs like that will be upgraded to necessity. They are not necessity, but general needs that's needed by everybody will be updated or qualifying to be with the category of necessity. That's one of them, and that's why scholars said if a person really thinks, and again it goes to every single person, if you have funds, your dad is mashallah can afford it, your family or yourself, then you cannot take, you're not allowed to take from it. But we're talking about somebody, it's either this or I'm not going to go to college. In this case, the scholar said no, you go to college, and then with all the other I would say guidelines, pay it off as soon as you can. If you can work in the summer, something, reduce, just take what's necessary of it and get out of it as soon as you can, because it's a debt and it involves something that is not approved by Islam, and you just get into it as a concession only when you think you need it.
Jazakallah khair, Sheikh. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was a very insightful conversation. So I really thank you for your time. And I will ask you to please close our conversation with a dua.
Jazakallah khair. It was my pleasure, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us and bless your community and bless our communities and all Muslims. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Allahumma ij'al jam'ana marhuma wa tafarruqana min ba'dihi ma'suma wa la taj'al fina wa la ma'ana wa la baynana shaqiyyan wa la mahruma. Wa Allah bless this gathering and make it for your sake, Ya Rabbil Alameen. Wa Allah shower your blessings and rahmah and mercy upon us, Ya Rabbil Alameen. O Allah, relieve us from this pandemic, Ya Rabbil Alameen. O Allah, make us all safe and our families and our loved one from this pandemic. And O Allah, deliver us all safely. And O Allah, bring us to our masjids fully in Ramadan, inshaAllah, after you give us your rahmah, Ya Arhamar Rahimeen. Allahumma salli wa sallim wa barik ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Jazakumullahu khair.
وإياك شيخ عليه الصلاة والسلام. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله.
وعليكم السلام ورحمة الله وبركاته.